I want you to know that I recognize that incredible range of emotions on a day like this. For some, it's a huge celebration of mom. I get that. I'm with you. For some, it's a hard day. For some, your mom passed away this last year. This is the first Mother's Day, and it hurts. My mother died fairly young. I was in my 30s, my late 30s, but I, to this day, remember the first Mother's Day that my mother was gone. Now you feel that. So I pray that today's not only a teaching day, and it will be, but an uplifting day as well. Let's get in the Word. I'm going to go where every pastor in the world is today. Proverbs 31. I like the very end of it. I was going to give you the verses 26 to the end. Some of these lines just, she opened her mouth with wisdom. Stop right there. Come on. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Verse 26. Her tongue is the law of kindness. She looked well the ways of her husband and eat not the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Again, whoa. Her children rise up, and then adults, they call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou exceed them all. Favor is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands. Let her own works praise her in the gates. Tell you the truth, as a pastor, I love preaching on special days. I have a head start. You kind of know what's coming. I love Easter and Father's Day and Christmas. And you know the theme. You kind of walk in. I don't have to start from scratch. You already know what's coming. You knew today would be about mothers. I've got a running start. While I love preaching on special days, there's one I don't care for. Mother's Day. It's hard because I can't identify personally. Because I know the Lord, I identify with the joy of Christmas, the joy of Easter. I'm a dad. I totally get Father's Day, which is way more fun than Mother's Day. But how do I, a man, identify with Mother's Day? How do I preach with expertise about being a mom? It's a bit of a puzzle. But I think I've been an eyewitness to really quality mothering. Tamara was just great raising our kids with our kids, and she continues to raise me, so it's kind of ongoing. But when I kind of think in terms of what God has designed as a mom, I take it when I was the son, and I lived my life watching who my mom was. I think I understand what God's called a motherhood is as I look at my own mom. First of all, let's check out the family. This is probably around 1955 or so. That's a cute little boy. You do notice everybody's looking at the camera but me. Shiny thing. I haven't changed. By the way, are those suspenders not to die for? There we are. There's four of us. My mom, my dad, my sister Carol, and I. That's the family. But really the story today is about my mother. I want you to take a look at my mom. Yeah, she's really pretty. I think that good looks of DNA tend to run in our family, don't you? Nowhere in my notes does it say pause for laughter there, just so you know. Being transparent, writing a message where my mother is the key, that's hard because it's dangerous. First of all, she was a key figure in my life, and she's dead. I gotta control my own emotions. Second, I want a message that would be useful and not just sentimental ramblings. I think I can make you feel good, but it doesn't help anyway. Our goal ought to be higher than just making you feel good. So I pray that I kind of avoid these two hazards. I think there is important lessons about being a mom that my mom kind of mastered. I think there are three incredibly important pieces of a puzzle to being a mom. Number one, be lovingly stronger than your children. Number two, teach spiritual values to your children. Number three, have generational influence over your children. That first is so critical. Be stronger than your children. Because I got news, your kids don't need another friend. They need a parent. And this is easy to say, be stronger than your children. It's hard. It takes resolve. And in my own home, growing up, I was somewhat of an only child. You're saying, whoa, we saw you had a sister. Absolutely right. There's an age gap between us. She was off to college at Olivet when I was in 5th grade. So therefore, most of my adolescent, preteen, teen years, I was kind of an only child because my sister was off college and then married and in her own life. My father played the trumpet for the United States Steel Public Relations Band, and they had some periodic tours where they'd be gone different times. So therefore, the reality is for a hunk of my life, it was me and my mom. And the problem is, we're alike. We are two bulls in one place. I tend to look like my father as I look at photos of my dad, but my personality tends to be more like my mom, and we were two strong personalities in one home. And my mother was determined to be stronger than me. That's hard. Because in fairness, consider the boy she had. I'm strong-willed. If I know what I'm after, it's hard to deter me. And on top of that, I'm hyperactive. This is before Ritalin and chemistry. There's never a time something's not moving. I can't help it. One of our family stories, when Tammy and I were first married, she had to make those adjustments because, it's always going. We went to a friend's house, and I'm going back 30 years. In their guest room, they had this waterbed. And this is before wave technology. We're going back to the beginning. And I toss and turn in my sleep. So Tammy's riding along. I guess at one point, I almost flopped, and the tsunami hit Tammy. She literally went airborne out of the bed. And see, the downside is, when I do counseling, I try to warn people that I'm hyperactive because they talk about a counselor's body language. You want to make sure that the person you're dealing with understands completely. They have your attention. You're not trying to rush them. You're not impatient. My body language is terrible because I'm flipping my ring. I'm tapping my finger. I'm tapping my toe. All of my body language tends to say, move it along. But I don't even know I'm doing it. I remember when I was in Virginia Beach, which we pastored before this church. I had this incredible virus. It was really a bad deal. And our doctor in our church, Dr. Holt, gave me a prescription that was powerful. And knocked it out. But one time, I was sitting on the couch, and Tammy looked at me and goes, "This is spooky." I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Nothing's moving." So I'm so hyperactive that watches on me run fast, no matter what. So I'm always having to move it back a little bit, my expensive Timex. I've always got to move it back because my body is just producing so fast. In any case, my mother has a strong-willed, hyperactive boy on her hands, and she was determined to be stronger than me. That was hard. I always thought it was a coincidence, but as an adult, I look back and realize, as I was going through our study school at the church, study school teachers felt God's call on their life to retire when they saw me coming. God had told them, I must step aside. Jesus told me. I think Gene was coming. I retired more Sunday school teachers than you can imagine. And school was hard for me because I'm so hyperactive that the mundaneness of schoolwork was hard for me to channel. My mother was a big reader, always looking for ideas to challenge me and to raise me. I don't remember this, but it's one of the family stories. I was about 5 years old. At Christmas time, someone had given my mom a book, Your 6-Year-Old Boy. And she, despite the family activities, she was sitting reading this book. And someone noticed that Marjorie, my mother, was not participating in the whole family thing. And they leaned back and said, Marjorie, you're sure enjoying that book. And she said to nobody, it's going to be a hard year. She set guidelines. I broke them. There were non-negotiables in my life. As a small boy, I broke the guidelines. I got spanked every time. I was so strong-willed, this meant pretty much daily. I knew the rules, I broke them. I was always testing. Someone gave her a book on positive reinforcement. Dr. Spock came down the pike. The way to raise your child is to positive reinforce. Anything they do good, reward is repeated. Anything you reward will happen again. And I had gone 3 days in a row without a spanking. 3 days in a row without challenging her. That's huge. So she decided, the Dr. Spock, we got to celebrate. Gene's been a good boy. I guess I got to invite my friends. I don't remember all of this, but we celebrated 3 days of Gene being a good boy. We had cake, we had balloons. She'd have gotten bozo if she could have. We were celebrating. Gene has been a good boy for 3 days. As I understand it, I guess I got spanked at the good boy party. The string of 3 days is over. Every summer, I love going to church camp. Every summer. And church camp back then, you left on Monday, came back on Friday, and Mom packed a suitcase. One year, and again, this family stories. One year when I came home, Mom opened the suitcase on Friday and realized it was perfectly packed. Exactly the way she packed it. It dawned on her. I got to camp, threw the suitcase under the bed, had fun for 5 days, and grabbed it on the way home. So much for hygiene. My mother has a hyperactive, strong-willed boy, and she's going to be stronger. Thank God. You do your children an incredible disservice if they can be stronger than you. If they can wear you down. If they can wear down your resolve. This leads us to the magic question. When your child blasts through the boundaries, who's there to stop them? When your child blasts through the boundaries, who is there to stop them? Therefore, who's preparing your child to be an adult? Let me take a minute here. I think we got to chase a rabbit trail just to make sure we're on the same page. Let me define spanking. Anymore, there's kind of a line being sold to us that there's a very thin line between spanking and abuse. That's stupid. Amen. There's a gigantic line between spanking and abuse. It's not true. As you watch parents out there, you can see terrible signs of discipline. Our Lord has so wonderfully created this padded area. Whenever it's necessary, He's created it just for you. The rear end is not only an architectural shock absorber for your spine and your back, it's the only place for appropriate discipline. Striking a child in the face is not inappropriate, that's abuse. Striking a child in the chest, that's not just inappropriate, that's abuse. In the ribs, that's abuse. Stomach, that's abuse. I spent my preschool years getting spanked. I did. I broke the rules. I paid the price until I realized it was better not to break the rules. But in every single one of those episodes, I was never once abused. A child doesn't need to be beaten to know they're wrong. What's happening here? Your child is learning authority. I've come to a conclusion. Kids who are not being taught this when they are young, when it's time to teach them, have a trouble the rest of their life. They never can function well under authority because you're teaching them what authority is. You're teaching them boundaries. And they really struggle with Christianity because Christianity is about authority of Christ and living my life under His authority. When I was young, if I didn't learn authority, I would always struggle with authority, and the authority is Christ. We either teach them when they're young or we can't figure out what went wrong when they're adults. I can remember some very specific life lessons when I learned it that day, when it clicked, when it came to real. For instance, I remember the day I understood honesty. I was a typical kid. I lied to my parents. Any problem, I changed the story so I'm innocent. I was the most innocent kid on earth. Admit it, your kids do this. If you're sitting here and saying, my child never lies to me, we got to talk. When I was in trouble, I could change the truth to make it suit me. My problem, my mother always knew. I ended up being punished for disobedience, then for lying. I remember the day specifically I learned honesty. There's something, I love to practice baseball. And I got my hands on these plastic golf balls, the plastic deals. I would bounce it off the sidewalk, and it would come up at different heights, and I had a wiffle bat, and in my backyard I'd practice swinging. But when I would do this, I was Ernie Banks. Now, I didn't pretend to be Ernie Banks. I was Ernie Banks. I loved the Cubs, and I loved Ernie Banks. And he had a particular way of batting with his elbow up. And when the pitcher was getting ready to throw it, he had a nervous twitch. He'd move his fingers and then step into it. I could bounce the ball so high that I had time to get in position, move my fingers, and Little League games. I was never Gene Tanner in Little League games. And next up, Ernie Banks. We had a pretty good sized backyard and a garage, and every once in a while, I would hit it really well and get it in the alley over the garage. Now, I couldn't go get the ball right away or the practice golf ball. I had to run the bases, but Ernie would. And I could quote exactly Ernie's 500th home run off Atlanta, third row in the left field bleachers. Jack Brickhouse, hey, he did it, he did the 500. So anytime I'd hit it over the garage, I would have to run the bases and quote Jack Brickhouse. Ernie had done it again. Ernie hit the 500th home run in my backyard about 30, 40 times. The garage had this window. You're ahead of me. I hit that window time after time after time. Those little plastic golf balls never broke it. This one day, pop, I hit it just right. And the glass didn't shatter. It was a hole. It was just a little hole where the ball went through. And you know when you do something wrong, you freeze. And I listened for Mom to come running. She was vacuuming. She hadn't heard. Starts. A bird came out of nowhere. Well, Gene, where's the bird? He came out the same hole. He was Cirque du Soleil bird. He was gifted. You know, it dawns on you, that ain't gonna fly, literally. That's not gonna work. So after a while, you realize, I got nothing. So I went in, and I think parents hate this when the kids come and say, I'm sorry. They know something ain't right. She's vacuuming, I got her attention. I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I told her the truth. So she went in the garage, got the ball, gave it back to me, and said, go ahead and practice. Something's missing. What just happened? No spanking. I broke the window. That's not cheap to fix. She said, Dad will fix it. I said, Mom, I broke the window. Was it an accident? Yes. Did you tell me the truth? Yes. Go ahead and play. Dad will fix it. I was praised for being honest. Honesty works. Who knew? From that day on, it got in my head, if you tell the whole truth up front, everything will pretty well take care of itself. You're way ahead if you tell the truth. As an adult, I got plenty of faults. Don't go amening, just let it go. But wrestling with the truth is not one of them. I learned honesty as a kid in my backyard. Honesty is not standard equipment, it's gotta be taught. If you don't know your child well enough to know if he's telling the truth, you don't know him well enough. If you can't tell, you gotta invest your life knowing them better. She knew I could not fool her. Eventually, I just stopped trying. Mom knew because there was this unique, tremendous quality between us. If you're assuming things like honesty will come naturally, you made a mistake. Growing up, Mom and I, two strong personalities, blended because we were close. One of my great joys, so often dinner was me and her. My sister was in college. My dad was playing in the orchestra or band somewhere. And just up the road on Ridge Road was a restaurant called Minor Dunn. I love Minor Dunn to this day. Mom and I would go and sit at Minor Dunn and just talk. I'd tell her about school. I'd tell her about this. I'd tell her about that. We would just talk. It was wonderful for me. To this day, every once in a while, if I'm coming back from Chicago, I pull off on Indianapolis Boulevard. There's one Minor Dunn left in the area. It's in Hammond. I just get a craving. I just want to have a Minor Dunn because it kind of brings me back to that. I'm a terrible eater. I was in a fast food restaurant not that terribly long ago, McDonald's or something. And you know, you hear the conversations in other booths. And the mother said something, and this young grade school boy said to his mom, shut up. And I kind of got silly trying to eat. I thought, what would happen to me if I would have ever told my mother, shut up? Now, the problem is not the disrespectful child. The problem is the mom. I don't want to see that boy at 18. Tammy and I and our kids, we enjoyed every season. We were stronger than our kids. And as adults, our relationship with them is so wonderful. I love being a part of forming who they are. But one thing I've learned, there's nothing worse than inconsistent discipline, as we're talking about being stronger than your child. The kid never knows for sure the outcome of his behavior. If you're inconsistent, they don't know. Kids know instinctively when a spanking is deserved. I learned this with Julie's first spanking. She was a toddler in a diaper, and she was begging for it. You know, every once in a while a kid just begs for it. Tammy was in the kitchen, and Julie was just terrible. And Jonathan was in the living room playing with his trucks. And I was in the living room, and he was observing all this. He looked at Julie, then he looked at me. Then he looked at Julie, and he looked back at me. And I thought, Jonathan knows that kid needs a spanking. Kids know. And I thought to myself, you know, Jonathan, you're right. She's never been spanked. She needs to be introduced to what can happen when you're that bad. And some parents count, I was never a counter. I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, but for me, I was never a counter. I was like Pearl Harbor. I came out of nowhere. So I circled around, and Julie was just a bad day. And I didn't spank her hard, first spanking in her diaper. I gave her a little swat. And she was in shock. I said, Mommy said no, no. Now, when I spanked her, it wasn't hard enough it was more the issue than pain. As soon as I spanked her, Jonathan went, Dad! Now, I'm feeling bad. I just gave my baby the first spanking of her life. I'm not enjoying this moment. And Jonathan's been raised, never hit a girl and all of that. I don't need to be lectured by a first grader right now. So I spanked her, and Jonathan went, Dad. So I kind of turned on him. I said, can I help you? I kid you not. He said, Dad, you got to follow through on that swing. I kid you not, one of the great lines of all time. Kids know when someone ought to be spanked. If you're consistent, they know the line. It's when we ignore the line that we mess everybody up. Most important, be stronger than your kids. That's easy to say, but I got to tell you, campers, that takes work. Because if you're not stronger than your kids, 2 and 3 won't happen. First, be stronger. Number 2, be spiritual with your children. Ritualistically, pray with them when they go to bed. I cannot remember a night my mother didn't come in and sit in my room and pray with me before I went to bed. You're saying as a little boy? No, until I went to college. I can't remember a night. It's tradition, it's what we do. It's incorporated into our lives. And my mother incorporated something else that I thought was brilliant. She dedicated to every one of us a verse, a passage of Scripture. Mine is 2 Timothy 2, 1 through 4. And that was the verses that was from mom to me. Her husband, my dad, my sister Carol, when my sister got married, Alan, when I married Tammy, she got a verse dedicated just to her. My 2 kids, my sister's kids, grandkids, whenever someone came into this world as part of our family tribe, they knew a passage of Scripture was going to be dedicated specifically to them. And what a shock. I have Scripture that I've written for Tammy and for my Jonathan, and when Jonathan married Crystal and their boys, and when Julie married Nate on this stage, part of the wedding ceremony, I said, Nate, it's a tradition in our family to have verses of Scripture. I'm going to give you yours right now. It was part of the marriage. And every single birthday card that comes from our family, at the bottom of the card says, remember, and there's that verse. My uncle did her funeral. He did it from her Bible, this one. And it was so moving because he said, what Marjorie said to Jean is, and he would read it. What Marjorie said to Carol is, and he would read it. And he read the passages from my mother's Bible as part of the funeral, read back to us. It was powerful. Her Bible is always on my desk because it's so notes all through it. If I'm having a tough day, it helps me because I'll read her notes that she wrote to herself. It's old, it's well marked, messages to the family. That's parenting. Be stronger than your children, lovingly stronger. And now you're in a position to teach spiritual values. And third, have a generational influence. I'm suspicious if you do the first 2 really well, the third might happen automatically. But I think you've got to be a little bit purposeful. Generational influence. What I mean by that is because I was raised with prayer every night. When I raised Jonathan and Julie, Tammy and I went in their rooms, and there we were. You're saying, but kids don't know how to pray. We had a system. I would pray first, and then Tammy would pray. And then she would say, and now, Jesus, Jonathan's going to tell you about playing with his trucks today. She always kind of gave a lead in. Or now, Jesus, Julie's going to tell you about her first day at school. We always gave a lead in, and then I would kind of wrap up in prayer. Why? Because that's how I was raised. The word says, raise a child in the way he will go when he is old, and he'll not return from it. Raise a child in the way he will go, and when he was old, he will not leave it. There's so much logic in Scripture. Now, of course, the dividends. Shocking, Jonathan and his wife took my grandsons in with prayer. Who saw that coming? Well, of course. And then there are the memories, the prayer memories. Julie and I had a tradition when she was growing up. When she was 3, after she prayed, she gave me 3 kisses. When she was 4, it's 4 kisses. It's awkward now that she's 30, but she was 4. And I was gone at a meeting for a couple of days, and Tammy called me. And she said, on your way home, just be aware, I just want you to know, Julie got kind of sad last night. I said, why? You weren't here to give her 4 kisses. And so we prayed, Jesus, would you give Daddy 4 kisses for me? So when I got home, my 4-year-old's greeting me. You know what I said. I said, Julie, the craziest thing, I was almost asleep. And I could swear I felt 4 kisses across my cheek. Oh, did she light up? When you're not praying with your kids, you're losing the opportunity of memories. I was pastor at Virginia Beach not very long before I came here. And we got word that my mother might have cancer. They were meeting an oncologist. And so the decision was the entire family would go. So I talked to my church board. They were extremely gracious. I said, get home to your mom. And so our kids were young. We had a van. We loaded the van, got the kids ready, and up popped J.D. barefoot. J.D. is one of the most fun laymen I've ever had. Incredibly supportive. He gave me an honorary doctorate. Every time he talked to me, it began with, Doc. He gave everybody an honorary doctorate. He talked to the entire church. Doc. He came to me and said, Doc, we had a board meeting. We have the money. Here's your airline tickets. Get home to your mama. And so it was wonderful. They flew us home with open air to get back. And we met with the oncologist, and the news was as bad as it could be. Yes, she had liver cancer. And no, there was no transplant. It had spread. It was really, really negative. And I said, well, is there a chance for a remission? I'll never forget, he said, you might have already had it without realizing it. And so we flew home with heavy hearts, knowing that my mom's time was limited. Not long after, I mean, within a month, my sister Carol called and said, Mom has pneumonia. So I met with the church board and I said, I promise I'm not going to make this over and over and over. I recognize my role is here, but I think I need to get home to my mom. And the board, again, was incredibly kind. And again, we're packing the van to run home when my mom has pneumonia. And up pops J.D. Doc, we got 4 tickets. I said, J.D., I can't take those. I know the finances of the church. It was a gift the first time, and these are expensive. Cash these in. You don't have the money. He said, Doc, I'll take care of it. When I found out J.D. did, and only J.D. could, these people loved him, I loved him. He got up on the stage and said, Pastor's been good to us, and now we're going to be good to him. We're going to pass the plates. I want 20s. I don't want to see a 5. I don't want to see a change. I want to see a 10. If you're taking your family to lunch, go home. I want 20s. They raised more money than the airline tickets. I thought, the more times I go home, this could be a good fundraiser. Just turn old J.D. loose. Being a pastor in great churches has been a gift to me. Virginia Beach was a gift to me then. You've been a gift to me for 25 years. It's a gift. The only thing that bothered me, we had the van all packed, and J.D., I wish he'd come before we packed the van. But when I flew home, it was shocking. In the flight, I kind of prayed that I wanted some time with my mom. If this is the end, I can deal with it. But I wanted some time with my mom. As soon as I walked in the room, I realized I wasn't going to get it. You've all had family members that you've been there when they died. It's different. They're breathing out of their mouth. They're thin. Liver cancer is brutal because your skin turns a shade of yellow. Her eyes were yellow. I realized I'm not going to be seeing my mom. I'm not going to talk to my mom. Who this is in that bed is somebody kind of different. She died in Crown Point Hospital. I got to be honest with you. When I first came to this church, one of my first calls was in the Crown Point Hospital. When I walked in that hospital, man, the weird memories that flooded back. It took me a while to go there. I'm comfortable now, but it took me a while to go to Crown Point Hospital and not have some really weird feelings coming through. But I had really hoped that there'd be a chance. Just one more time with my mom. It was one of those, and I knew it was at the end, so I basically moved in. I slept in the waiting room there, and I read a book in her room, and I felt like I'm the son, I'm on duty. It's my role to be on duty, whatever that is. It was one of those weird days, because family was always there. My dad had bumped into a friend of his named Al that had been so part of his life in the mills. Al's wife was having surgery, and I said, Dad, maybe it'd be wise, take a day away. Be with Al, your best friend in your life, have lunch, have dinner, escape for a while. My sister and brother-in-law had a commitment. They lived in Kankakee, had a commitment in Kankakee that was non-negotiable. I said, don't worry about it. So they needed to take one day away. So it was me and Julie and our kids, and I told me and Tammy and our kids, I said, well, you take Julie and Jonathan. They've been troopers here for the last couple of days. They're young kids in a waiting room. Her mom lived an hour away. Take them. Let them run, let them play. Give them a day off of this. So oddly enough, because of a weird set of circumstances, I was in the room by myself. I was just sitting reading a book, and out of the blue, I heard, hi. I looked over, and my mom was completely awake. You'd have thought she'd have been in there with a broken ankle. Totally coherent. I said, hi. I pulled a chair up, and we talked all afternoon. We laughed. We cried. We spent that afternoon hanging out. And you know what I did? I yelled at her for the discipline that she'd done all my life. Not hardly. Psychologists say that would happen. It did in my case. I thanked her. Thanked her for her strength. Thanked her for her love, that she was stronger for me. We spent that afternoon reminiscing, a mother and a son, laughing at the years we'd had. I think if God came to you and said, I gave you 4 or 5 days, do them over again, you knew what you'd do. I'd do my wedding day. That's a great day. The wedding of my kids, birth of my kids, and the afternoon I had with my mother. I'd do that day again. 24 hours later, she was dead. There was a lot of people in the room that moment, that split second in time when you're here and you're not. But there was only one person holding her hand. That'd be me. But generational influence. I raised my kids the way I was raised. That's my mother's influence, and now she's influencing her grandchildren and generations on down the line. One thing that Tammy and I did that was just brilliant, amongst all the other brilliant things we've done. We saw this book. We said, this could be fun. It's so old, we didn't have Julie. All we had was Jonathan. We said, why don't we get this for Mom to write to Jonathan? And it's filled with her growing up and her raising me, which has been edited. Pictures, it's all sorts of, it's really a great reminiscent. And it's actually Jonathan's property. But I got it for today. Because the end, there's a place where you can write anything. What did we forget to ask you? Because there's questions about where'd she go to high school, how'd she meet Grandpa, and all these things. It's her life. And it's in her handwriting, so it's kind of important. But there's this page saying, write whatever you want. And so here's what my mother wrote her grandson. I'm writing this on November 6, 1987. We had a wonderful family reunion in August of this year. Everyone had such a wonderful time. This made me think about our reunion in heaven. I want all my family there. We don't know who will go first. It was her. Second or even last. But we can know that when that time comes, we will all be ready. I was so happy to hear that in September you asked Jesus to come into your heart. Always remember, Jonathan, I will meet you in heaven. I love you, Grandma. What is that? Generational influence. Do you think that's powerful to Jonathan? Do you think that's in her handwriting? Do you think that's powerful to my son? Oh, my word. Generational influence. And single moms, I want you to know I pray for you. You got to pull this off on your own. But you can do this. I pray for moms and honor decisions that you make today. And I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. I don't want you to hear, you know, if I could just be just like Marjorie Tanner, it'll be all right. I don't think that's true. My mother was great, but she wasn't perfect. She was human. I'm not challenging you to be Marjorie Tanner. We already had one. I think you have unique gifts that are different from hers. You've got unique talents that are not hers. You are you. But with your unique talents and the uniqueness of who you are, you can do the 3 goals. You still can be lovingly stronger than your kids. You can teach them spiritual values. You can have generational influence. You can have your life count. And if you're not a single mom, men, you need to be challenged right alongside, because all of these deal with you as well. Make your life count.